The red line represents Shanghai to Guangdong ratio. In the 1980s, Shanghai had a huge advantage over these two provinces in terms of the patents that they filed for that particular year. Over time, this ratio has come down substantially. And there are different ways of slicing and dicing that data. All these different ways of looking at the same data tell you exactly the same thing. Over time, it is Zhejiang and Guangdong where a lot of these innovations happen, not necessarily in Shanghai. Let me skip some of these things and just highlight one success story in India as a way to illustrate the indirect role of the government in India. And that has to do with financial reforms. And I very much agree with Dr. Tian when he talked about the challenges in the Chinese economy. One of them is a financial system. The difference between China and India basically is when India began to reform its economy in 1991, simultaneously the country also began to reform its financial system. China began to reform its economy in 1978, many, many years ahead of India. But the country really has not started reforming its financial system until now. Right? So people may say it's after the WTO. I actually believe that in the last 2 years, China has gone back in terms of the financial reforms, using banks to support state-owned enterprises. This is actually a reversal of the financial reforms rather than further financial liberalization. India has achieved entrepreneurial success stories through its financial reforms. Infosys is a very good example of that success story. It is an entrepreneurial startup founded by 7 entrepreneurs in 7 engineers in India in 1981. Now it's one of the largest software companies in the world. One of the critical milestones of that company was the listing of its shares in 1993 on the Bombay Stock Exchange. And this is an interesting contrast between India and China. Many of the successful technological companies in India are listed in the Indian stock exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange. But if you look at Lenovo, if you look at Huawei, if you look at the Sina.com, Sohu.com, none of them is listed on the Chinese stock exchange. The Chinese financial system has nothing to do with the success of the Chinese entrepreneurial companies, whereas in India, the financial reforms contributed substantially to the success of entrepreneurial companies. So let me end by just giving you some data on Chinese R&D. And this is the R&D spending. This is China. The red line is China. And this is in terms of the absolute dollar amount. China now is spending close to 2% of the GDP on R&D. 2% is a level you observe among developed countries. It is very, very unusual for a developing country to spend such a high proportion of its GDP on R&D. And usually it will take a country for a long time to move from 1% to 2% of the GDP. Right? So once you, sorry, I didn't say it correctly. Usually it will take a country a long time to reach between 0 to 1%. And then it will be very quick for the country to reach from 1% to 2%. So China has crossed this threshold. India, by contrast, spends about 0.5% of the GDP on R&D, and Chinese GDP is 3 times the size of the Indian GDP, right? So just one difference between the two countries, you can tell that where the scientific knowledge is going to occur. It's probably going to occur mostly in China rather than in India. There are lots of problems with, by the way, I don't want to glorify what China has done. There are a lot of problems in Chinese universities, even even academic corruption, for example. I don't know, as an academic, how can I be corrupt? I got to learn how to do these things, but apparently there is corruption in Chinese universities. There are frauds, and so I'm not saying that China has done everything right, but it is important to emphasize the point emphasized by Milton Friedman, which is the scale effect. The conquest, according to Milton Friedman, the conquest of the technological frontier, like the conquest of the geographic frontier, requires millions of individuals, right? So this is, I think this is where China is going to go. Basically, if you look at the recent year in which we have data, say 2008, there are 6 million Chinese college graduates, compared with 1.5 in 1998. Okay? So this is a huge increase in a span of 10 years and 11 years. But people say, yeah, but 30% of the college graduates in China are unemployed. Right? 20–30% of them are unemployed. That's okay because of the scale effect, right? So even if half of the college graduates are not employed, so you still have 3 million as compared with 1.5 million in 1998 who were 100% employed, right? So the scale effect is very, very important. And I think this is, even though there are lots of problems in Chinese universities, in our research project on Chinese scientific papers, there are lots of problems there. But this is a phenomenon of achieving success with a long tail of failures, right? So there are a lot of failures, but a few of them may succeed brilliantly. And so this is where I think China is going to, this is the likely direction in which we are going to see the emergence of science and technology in China, not because everything they do is successful, but because they're doing so many things, the probability will say some of them are bound to succeed. Thank you very much.